what day it is. Good morning, everybody. This is Doug. Welcome back to What's the Hazard. It is Friday, November 10th, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Marine Corps birthday.
Marine Corps birthday?
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, why don't you actually say, because I, as a civilian, I don't really have any right.
Well, happy birthday to all my brothers and sisters out there. Semper Fi, thank you for your service. And then I think you're going to talk Veterans Day, but happy early Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
To all you folks out there.
Well, thank you for your service,
you
man.
bet.
I appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to ask you that before we got started because tomorrow is Veterans Day, November 11th. A very special day, a day that I think we all could do a little bit better with gratitude and appreciation. I know there are many of us that understand the magnitude of service, and hopefully we are grateful and expressing that gratitude, you know, with sincerity to our family and friends and other folks that have served the country. But I do have a little bit of trivia for Veterans Day. More fun facts, really. This is not intended to stump anyone. First of all, I better introduce my guest. I'm sorry, man.
Oh, you're fine.
This is Ezra Schlecht,
Yep.
and you are currently with Marsh McLennan Agency.
Correct, yep. Inspro to the local folks.
Inspro,
Yep.
yeah, people that
Still
might understand
Marsh
Inspro.
McLennan.
Absolutely,
Yep.
man. And so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We've been circling around each other for a long time, and I think we'll go back and talk a little bit about how you got into the safety field and the different stops that you've made. You've hit all the big three.
Something like
You've
that.
worked for a plant, you've worked for a company, you've worked for the government. Now you work as a consultant in a third-party capacity. So in my mind, those are the big three.
Sure.
So we'll talk about that journey and how you got into this, and maybe a little bit about your Marine Corps service, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we can talk
You'd be
a little
willing
bit
to share
about
that
that.
a little
Absolutely.
bit, because with Veterans Day tomorrow, I do have a few fun facts. Just looked these up this morning, but 19 million approximately veterans in the United States. Pretty big number. That number may be increasing. In fact, I don't know how old this data is. Women make up about 13% of veterans. I would not have guessed that number quite so high, but that's interesting. Did you serve with any women? Were there women in the Corps? That would maybe
there
seem
are.
to be the...
So I was an infantry guy, so we kind of lived on our own little island. I mean, we're the best, right? So they put us on an island.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But there were in the S shops or like the admin folks typically, and then they do some other roles. I served with some women when I was in Afghanistan. They were part of the FET team, female engagement team.
Okay.
And they did, females can only search females, that type of deal.
I gotcha. It was interesting. Last night on the news, there was a very short report about a woman who was actually like an attempted assault. She was running yesterday morning over in Council Bluffs. I think she was in town on business, and someone tried to assault her, and she was able to fight them off. And she was actually like the first female fighter pilot in one of the services, and she was in town for something, and I thought, she's a badass if she's a fighter pilot, and that guy picked the wrong victim.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Good
So
for
I'm
her.
glad. Hopefully she was unharmed and everything worked out all right, and they caught that piece of shit. But anyway, Veterans Day. This is interesting. This one's for my mom. Veterans Day. There is no apostrophe in Veterans Day. It's NS. There is no N apostrophe S or anything like that. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I let my phone do that.
I don't know if anyone else finds that. My mother and I probably find that interesting.
Grammatically correct.
Grammatically correct. That's how they intended it. Originally known as Armistice Day, which I did know. I think it is the anniversary. And Armistice Day was the anniversary of the end of World War I. So it became Veterans Day. And if you have not been, tomorrow at 11 o'clock at Arlington Cemetery, they will do, at the Tomb of the Unknowns, they will do their ceremony for Veterans Day, which I imagine is fantastic.
I've not been.
Oh my gosh, it's impressive, man. My family and I went to D.C. a few years ago, took our boys there, went to Arlington, of course, because you have to go to Arlington Cemetery, and watched the procession, the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Incredible. I imagine tomorrow is a really special occasion for that ceremony. But anyway, thank you, one and all veterans. We sincerely appreciate your service. And I hope you get the. Is there a free meal thing tomorrow?
Oh, all over the place.
Are they good, man? Do you partake in that?
No.
You won't get a free breakfast? I think some of my buddies will go get a free breakfast or something.
I
hope they do.
I hope people take advantage of it. It's a nice gesture. Right?
It is a nice gesture.
And, it's appreciated by a lot of people. I know that. But yeah, free coffees, free breakfast, free lunch, lots of free stuff. Yeah.
Good deal. So let's talk about you a little bit, man. I mean, I'm always interested in how people get into the safety profession, but let's start with your service. What led you to? I'm assuming you enlisted.
Yep, I did. Yeah, there was a couple hards for me. Right, I told the recruiter, I said I'm going to be this or I'm not going to go. Mm-hmm. So that was an 03, which is the designation for infantry.
Okay. Is this a family business? I mean, you have family in the military, or what led you to? Just seemed like the right thing to do, or in the moment it was. Yeah,
it was a little bit of I'm a patriot at heart, right? And then a little bit of I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I still don't, but
yeah, I'm with you, man. Me too.
A little bit of that, a little bit of a couple of my friends did it. Grew up shooting guns, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, well, let's do this, and of course I get sucked down. I watched all the military movies, and the YouTube was just kind of getting fired up back then. So I watched all those videos and got super excited, and I'm like, well, let's do something I can't do in the civilian world. So I decided I'd be a machine gunner.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Was that awesome?
It was cool. Yeah,
I'll bet.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, very good, man. I the movie American Sniper, similar story. Patriot, wanted to serve. It was right after 9/11, of course, and yours was shortly after 9/11. It sounds like.
I was in from 8 to 12.
8 to 12, so a few years after then.
I wasn't old enough to get the old push and Felicia.
You look young, but yeah, that's pretty damn young. You're about almost the age of some of my sons, it sounds like. But
yeah, I'm 33.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, for 33, man, you've done a lot.
Got a lot of miles.
Yeah, so how did you get into safety then in the first place?
Well, I get out of the Marine Corps, I don't know what I'm going to do. And this was pre-LinkedIn, Glassdoor, all that stuff, Indeed. So found a deal on Craigslist, right? So I was working construction, and I called this guy. I had AT&T at the time, still don't have service with AT&T, so don't get it. So I'm walking around the backyard, looking on the phone, trying to get service to call this guy. I told him a little bit about my background. All right, I'll see you on Monday. So that was the Saturday after I got out. Came home on a Friday. Saturday, called that guy. Start pouring mud on Monday. I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I dabbled in school. Lots of people go to school for 9 years. They're called doctors, as Tommy Boy reference for those folks that didn't get that.
Right. I went to school for 9 years, and I'm a safety guy.
Right. So it was on again, off again school, on again, off again construction, concrete, moving snow, that kind of stuff. So I did work once upon a time. And then a family friend recommended, hey, why don't you try safety? I'm like, okay, cool. So I took a bunch of safety classes at the council here in town. Ran down that rabbit hole, and at one of those classes, there was a guy that worked at a business in town where I was living, and struck up a conversation. I'm like, it'll lead to something, maybe, maybe not. A couple months later, give me a call. Intern there. 3 months go by. This was back when Southeast was doing quarters and not semesters. And I'm like, I'm not pushing your hand, but I need to register for classes if I'm not going to hang out. The next day, they offered me a job. I was there for, I don't know, a handful of years.
Okay.
And then from there, I went to go work with Jim.
So this was the steel business.
Yep.
On the steel side. Did we have interaction at that point?
I
thought we did. That's where we first met.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was thinking when driving over, yeah.
Doing the old silica piece.
The silica piece, exactly. Fascinating. It's a really interesting plant.
It is.
And that is an interesting business to get your chops or however you start.
Cut your teeth on safety real fast. Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah,
baptism by fire.
Right.
Almost quite literally. Yeah.
No doubt, man. I still, when I go over there to this day, I'm still amazed at the you know, it is this weird combination of medieval technologies and modern metallurgy and all of that, you know.
Yeah, it hasn't changed
working on
much,
dirt
right?
and stuff, and you know, it's just really amazing.
Yeah, it's a special breed of guys to work
It
in
is.
there, right? Because that's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
So yeah, you dabble in almost everything 1910 in that world.
Yes, exactly, which I thought is really fascinating. And it's a fun place to, as an industrial hygienist, I really enjoy going in there and just watching the guys work. But so you worked for Kugler.
Yep. Then I worked for Jim and the crew over there for a handful of years. That was a lot of fun.
Good educational piece too.
Oh, yeah,
you get a lot of training.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Jim talks about it all the time, right? You know, side by side with the big boys, and I joke and tell people, you know, I work for the good OSHA historically. And,
right. Exactly.
I get all the same trainings. So I know most of the dirty, dark secrets, and now I'm here on the good side.
Right. You're a consultant now.
Yeah.
And loss control?
Loss control consultant's my official title.
So in my mind, you have had all the big three jobs. Working in the private sector for a company, for that facility. You are responsible for a facility. And then you went and worked for the government. And even though it was the consultation side of the government, the bureaucracy is thick. It is the government. You're working, like you said, side by side with the regulatory agency. You know all of the secrets and the inner workings of that. And then you go to work as a consultant. So those are the big three in my mind. So talk about a little bit of what you do as a consultant now, because loss control is something that I've never done.
Sure. Yeah,
interesting.
It is loss control. You know, when we talk losses, I mean risk, safety. Those are giant umbrellas, right? Big buckets to get put into. So what it looks kind of high level for me, I still do lots of mock OSHA stuff, right? Because that was my bread and butter for a few years. So I do that. I do trainings, whether it's 10,000 foot view, or we run down rabbit holes, you know, fall protection specific or confined space, powered industrial truck, right? All of the things.
Wow.
I help with written programs, training, toolbox talks. I sit in on inspections, opening, closing, informals.
Yeah.
Keep an honest man honest there.
I'm sure that's comforting to your clients to have somebody that knows the system present.
Well, I think so, right? And, you know, similar to Jim, I come in at a good price for those folks, right? So it's all value add for them. So
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So you're also, is part of your responsibility property and stuff as well? Or, I mean,
I don't dabble in property.
Is that a separate side of the business, or does someone else do that?
Typically, that's going to be the carrier themselves.
Okay.
I ride along on some of those just to deconflict airspace. To help, you know, the insured feel at ease because they know me. I'm on their team. One and two, sometimes you need to, you know, similar to our friends from the government, sometimes they get caught up in, you know, being regimented and it's got to be this way. And you're like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. This is a recommendation or whatever that looks like. So,
right. A little bit more pragmatic approach, maybe. That's helpful because you do have experience. You've actually worked. You know, I tell people, like, somewhat jokingly, but I've never actually worked. You know, I've been doing safety stuff for quite a long time, and it's mostly just observation, training, you know, assistance, consulting or something. So, man, I mean, I don't really have any skills, you know.
Yeah, when I do 10 hours, right, I start off just high level in my background. You know, so they understand that I did work once upon a time.
Right, and I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah, and you know, my phrase is always, "I've done all the things I'm going to tell you not to do." So it helps
Which
me
gives credibility, man.
Be relatable to them, and you know, I understand that you know some of these things slow you down, right? But once you get used to it, and that's what you do, that's what you do. So you just gotta live it, breathe it, do it. And you'll be just as fast before, right? So in the Marine Corps, the motto was always slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? When we're clearing rooms and teaching, you know, junior Marines how to do that, and they're loud and clunky and jerky. They look like robots. It's like pump the brakes. We need to relax. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Right.
You know, glide through these things, and if we do that, you know, in the safety space. if we set people up for success, I think that's beneficial.
How long does it, this is kind of off topic now, but how long does it take people to learn these new habits? When you go in there and you're trying to instill some of these new, oftentimes we're breaking old habits that can be difficult. They're just used to doing things a certain way. I know that you do quite a bit of consulting in the construction sector with having had a background in construction. How long does it take these guys, if they are motivated to do so, to adopt these things and really, like you come back a year later and it looks like they've made progress, or can it be done 6 months, or what's your experience with that? Does it happen?
all across
over
the
the board?
Oftentimes it's, sometimes it'll take, right? So I like to show photos and videos to get that point seated home, right? Because that will stick with people, right? Similar
Videos
to
that you have taken? Or
all the
videos
above,
that,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. A lot of them I steal from the internet. But,
Okay.
It drives the point home, right? Similar to Chris, right? I like to tell stories and make that relatable because people remember that.
They do.
Tough to follow up off of that podcast this week. So I was excited because it's my birthday.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, man. So this is your birthday?
No, it's not my birthday.
It's the Marine Corps birthday.
Yeah, it's the Marine Corps birthday.
But I don't know any Marines that say I'm a former Marine or I'm an ex-Marine. You're a Marine, right?
Yeah, they say once always, right?
Yeah.
So
could you be called back up to service in the event of an emergency or something?
So yes and no. Not anymore.
There's a period of time?
Yep. So there's a period of time. So you do, all contracts are typically 8 on the front end. So you do, depending if you go to a special school or not, is going to drive what the front half of that enlistment looks like. Mm-hmm. If you're not anything special, like I was, right, just a knuckle dragger, it was 4
You're pulling
and 4.
triggers.
Yeah. So 4 years on the front end, and then 4 years IRR, inactive ready reserve.
Okay.
So in those 4 years, for a total of 8. So if you sign a 5-year or a 6-year on the front end, then it's only 3 or 2 on the back.
Gotcha.
So within that window, then they can pull your ticket instead of having a draft, right? So that's kind of how they circumvent that.
Okay, interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
It makes sense.
And then after
to have all these highly trained individuals rather than try to train a bunch of idiots coming in.
Yeah, well, with everything that's going on in the world right now, it's the scary space.
It is, isn't it?
There was a few generations after me, and when I say generations, just a couple, 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. So every year cycle, right, is a new breed of people. Junior Marines is the PC term. The old Corps guys called them boots.
Boots?
Boots, yeah.
Okay.
I think some of the Army guys call them cherries, things like that. But not all, but a vast majority of folks with actual combat experience are gone. They're out. Mm-hmm. They were sick of playing games, or they got pushed into, an admin role or getting into a B billet, doing a different job than what they really wanted to. So they got out, or they, all of the Fallujah vets are, the 03, 04 guys, they're retired, right? Their retirement age, that's 20 years ago. And do your 20 and you're done, right?
Yeah.
So all of the experience, just like a seasoned employee, right? All of that knowledge, they retire, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens here, right? But you can pass some of that knowledge down. Some of it you just got to do.
I would imagine unless you actually see that level of intensity, combat.
Yeah, and it's, there was a reason that people got hazed, right? They do it in boot camp, more structured, right? Mm-hmm. And then you do it when you get to the fleet, right? You get to your duty station, you get hazed there too. Mm-hmm. I remember my my roommate at the time, he left his book of knowledge, his Marine Corps Bible, out on this little table in our room. And you had to half-mast your curtains for the day when you were gone, and somebody looked in there and they saw the Bible sitting out, which was... You can't do that.
Forbidden, huh?
Yeah. So they made this kid. We lived kind of in a bowl, and way up at the top of this hill was a big like cell tower type deal. And they're like, "You see that tree way up there?" "Yes, Lance Corporal." "I want you to go get me a leaf from that tree of knowledge." He'd run all the way up there, a couple hours worth, come all the way back down, give it to him. Oh, not that leaf. I wanted a different leaf.
That's not the leaf.
No, so you had to go back up and get a different leaf.
Shit.
But you can't
But
do
that's
that
part
anymore.
of it, right?
Well,
I mean, that was part of the hardening and the process.
You know, part of the building that camaraderie, the trust, the trying to get everybody in the right headspace. But you can't do that now.
We don't do that.
If you do, you get in trouble. Or if you get caught, you get in trouble, right? Do as I say, not as I do. So it's a different breed of people, whether they want to agree with it or not.
Can you develop skilled warriors without doing a certain amount? I mean, that seems difficult.
I think you have to be a good leader, good instructor, good with words to get people in a headspace where they need to be. So is it achievable? Yeah. But instead of, a real short learning curve, the learning curve is a lot bigger, in my opinion, right? Now, there's different breeds of people that, you say, hey, this is why we wear safety glasses, and you always see them in them. Or you repeatedly tell somebody, wear your glasses, wear your glasses, wear your glasses, right? So we see it in the safety space. It's no different in the military.
Okay. Interesting. What about military service prepared you for the work that you're doing now? I know a number of my former colleagues at OSHA had served, had been in the military. I worked for DOD for 7 years, and so a number of those, and the guys that I worked with and gals there were also former military, and they seem to do very well, specifically in the government service, but in safety in general.
I think I'm a smart man, right? I think that, it's that structure. It's regimented, it's you're waking up at whatever time, you do this, you do that, like your day's built out. There's a rank structure, we don't fraternize, we don't jump rank. And I think you see a little bit of that in the government, right? So that, I think, translates well. And then there's a book that we follow. Right, 1910, 1926, or all of the other. Okay. And so they can look up. Here's the answer. So I think that translates well.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I think it's different for everybody.
So did your time then? I guess your time with the state didn't add to your federal time.
Probably not. No,
that wouldn't be the case. I know there were a few guys that came to work for OSHA who had been in the military, and then they wanted a little bit of additional federal service time. So they came to OSHA, or they probably went to other agencies, perhaps,
right.
Things like that. But they seemed to fit in really well. They certainly handled the frustrations of bureaucracy better than people who had not had any experience with that.
Yeah.
That crushes a lot of people.
It does. It's false motivation is better than no motivation.
Right, exactly.
So, misery loves company type of deal. And you get comfortable being uncomfortable or comfortable hating life and all of the above, but you're doing it with your brothers and sisters, right? Your friends. So
that is interesting. That is one of the. So I never served, and in retrospect, I don't know if I would have been good or capable, but I think I've always believed that maybe everybody should do a little bit of service. I don't know if that mandatory service thing like in Israel necessarily, but maybe would be a benefit to everybody having some level of. I think
a little bit, and early on I was an advocate for that. I'm like, everybody should do it so they understand it. Similar belief to everybody should ride along in a tractor trailer so they understand how fast those guys can't to stop, right? How fast it takes them or how long it takes them to get going. So they understand, they got wide turns or backing. Certainly they shouldn't drive, right? But they should at least ride along. As you get your operator's permit or driver's license, there should be a box there where they ride along with that, right?
I love
so
that.
They have an understanding there.
I personally don't think many people should have driver's licenses.
It's scary.
I think we just kind of give them away, and I certainly don't think of it as a right. You don't have a right to be a driver. It's a privilege, and you have to be able to demonstrate some competence. And every time I drive, every morning that I drive, I'm frustrated. The insanity. But I think your comment about the truck drivers in particular is an interesting one because it's easy to get frustrated with truck drivers and take for granted that they can maneuver their vehicle like we do our cars.
Yep.
stopping times and distances and things, and that's just not the case, man.
Yeah,
And,
you just
that would be valuable.
yeah. There's a video that's rolling through. The algorithm fed me on my LinkedIn
Right.
account. It's about TMAs, truck mounted attenuators, and it's an overseas video, but it's like
What is that?
truck mounted attenuator.
Yeah.
So you think like the flashing lights, like, hey, there's road work, the diamond flashing lights. If they're on the back of a vehicle, like a trailer, that would be a truck mounted attenuator. It's essentially a buffer.
Okay.
But they have, a few videos of how it started, and then these vehicles, emergency vehicles, and they're just getting smashed into on the roadways. And then they show, it's a sales pitch, right, to their TMA, which is basically like a big shock. So they slam into that. The vehicle doesn't move hardly at all, but that absorbs all of the impact of that car.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that we see that those are underutilized. Traffic control. I've been only to one ATSA training, and so my understanding of traffic control is limited. I've never worked in this space.
Oh, mine.
We write
Totally
business
ignorant.
for that, but you don't have to have gone to very many classes to understand what traffic control should look like and how often I drive around and see like just atrocious.
Yes.
And like people are out there working like, and the utilities districts are the worst. Right. But they
I
just,
can imagine.
I'm free. Nobody's going to hurt
Yeah.
me.
Nobody has real jurisdiction.
Yeah.
over
Nobody's
me,
going to drop a
certainly.
hammer on my head. Right. Like, so they're bad. Right. And then that trickle down effect, similar, translated into trenching and excavation. Right. Well, if you're not doing it, why do I have to do it?
Exactly.
And if my bid doesn't include a trench box and the time and the energy and the monies for that, but yours does, so mine's going to be substantially less time investment, dollar investment, who are they going to go with? The faster, cheaper.
No doubt.
Until there's a standard across the board that everybody's going to abide by. Hey, we're going to include safe protections for our employees. So there, and then the utilities wise, traffic control build out, slowing vehicles down, because what's everybody doing? They're on their phone, they're putting their makeup on, reading the books, the newspapers. I mean, you see it all.
It is
right?
remarkable. Yeah. How distracted drivers are. And I find myself distracted occasionally. I will take phone calls in the car. Probably shouldn't, but it's truly the only downtime I have. So if someone wants to speak with me, it's generally when I'm driving from one place to another. And,
Right.
I do the hands-free thing, but you're distracted nonetheless, I mean, it's
Yeah, I would much
difficult.
rather somebody take a phone call than a text message.
Yeah,
Right?
no
Because
doubt.
you're down looking at that, and, the
For
studies.
long periods of time.
The studies are showing that that's just as bad or worse than drunk driving. Right.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Until that tips and phones are strictly only ran through the speakers and the to text to talk that way, people are going to do it. Right. We're never going to take that
I know.
out of the people.
I know, which is why I just hate driving.
It's scary.
It is scary to me.
I'm not worried about my skill set driving.
Right.
Right. I know what my vehicles are capable of doing. We were talking about tires earlier. I got tires on my little SUV now that people would run for a couple more years, but I'm going to get rid of them because I want a little bit more aggressive tire for the
Absolutely.
winter.
Right.
But you see, and you just walk through any parking lot and you just look at people's tires, and then you look at the brake dust on their front wheels, and it's just like,
They're not fit for the road, and yet they're going to be out there.
yeah. And we're
plowing
coming
around,
up
changing lanes.
coming up
driving
into
Laker, yeah.
the winter and
It's going
ice.
to be rough,
and-
man.
So that's what scares
That's an
me.
interesting comment. I have never done that, but now I'm going to be obsessed with that, looking at tires in the parking lot.
I think that, because DOT, right, they have to have a certain tread depth.
Right.
I think that in order to get, and some people don't pay for insurance and, annually like they're supposed to, but I think annually for sure you should have to get your vehicle inspected.
at least road worthiness.
Yep. What do your
Brakes,
tires look
tires,
like? What do your brakes
lights,
look like?
Those kind of things.
And that dictates getting tags on your car to be able to operate, right? And I think if we...
I don't disagree.
You know, in the bigger cities, they've got like the fast passes that you put in the car, and you go, instead of paying the tolls, you just get charged. I think we tie something like that back to that, and we just put them on the roadways.
I like that idea.
They come out and they say hi to you if you're out of compliance.
I would love to see about half as many. I don't know if it would stop people from driving if they didn't have a license. I know that there are some people that probably wouldn't, and others that would regardless, and others that are driving without, licenses, but there are just way too many licenses out there. I think I could go further, but I would alienate a lot of listeners if I actually said what I really believe about some of these things. I think it's
well, I think
be misinterpreted to some degree.
I think conversely, right? If we tie that back to our space, right? The 10-hour cards are boggling to me, right? I think the concept of everybody having one is great, except for here's the kicker: I have a 10-hour card. I got a 10-hour card because somebody told me I needed one to get onto the data center jobs. And I said, well, I teach the class.
Right. I'm an authorized trainer.
I don't think I need a card.
Right.
Well, you do. And I'm like, well, instead of verifying, for giggles, I took an online.
Okay. How was that?
Awful.
Was it?
I watched Monday Night Football. One, because I teach the class. I know the material. But if I didn't, I could still do that, right? And when it prompts you to answer a question, you just get into your phone and look it up on the internet, and you answer the question, and you move on, and then you just click through it.
Yeah.
And the computer reads to you in this monotone, like flat. And I'm sure there's other online ones that are probably better than the one that I took, but
I doubt it.
So I don't think that having a card is end all be all. I think it's great. I think that the more important question is where and who, right? Because we both know Chris is a great instructor.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
One of the best.
And in safety, that can make or break the class, the
Without
instructor,
question.
right? So every 10-hour class is going to be different based off of the instructor.
No doubt.
If, the content's going to be different if you take what's given to you and you make it better. If you just take what's given to you that's canned and trash, quite frankly,
yeah, they're horrible.
It's
those old.
If you just take what's given to you and you don't modify it, those classes are going to be awful.
And it's interesting because I think the agency, when they first started these authorized classes or the outreach classes, the general industry and construction, it was certainly well intended, and it actually seemed good, but I think people misinterpret what that actually means, much like what you're saying. You've got a 10-hour card, and so therefore you must, have some useful safety knowledge, but the online thing has really diminished that, and that has become I need a 10-hour class to get on this site by Monday, Saturday afternoon. I can do the online, $59 or $69. Bang, 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 I've got my card, or I've got some, proof of completion.
As long as you do it correctly. Because if you accidentally don't log out like I did, it'll lock you out of the system. Because it thinks you're working, and when you're not you're not going forward.
Right.
So I just left it, logged me out overnight, and it thought I was working. So it will structure it for content. Like, you can only go 7.5 hours like you're supposed to.
No kidding.
At least the one that I did, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
then it'll stop you, right?
I mean, that's the rule.
But yeah, that the convenience factor of only having one or two guys do the online one, I get that.
Right. And the cost.
The cost, yeah. I
mean, you take a face-to-face class, and it has to be more expensive. I mean,
venues don't give those away.
That's right. Yeah, no doubt. So, but I was always of the impression that if someone took a 10-hour class and they left with 2 or 3 just little bits of information that they weren't aware of prior, that was a success.
We're better off than we were. Right?
Absolutely. But I never expect anybody to walk out of there with 10 hours worth of knowledge and information.
No, absolutely
That's
not.
absurd.
Yeah.
They're
never going to, right? Because you take, they're construction guys, right? And sometimes I hand out critique forms, sometimes I don't, depending. One of them was have it be like a 10-hour class, and it's like, well, that's contact time, 10 hours, not breaks and lunch
Right.
and sidebars and things like that.
Exactly.
So, I like to make mine almost 2 full days.
I would agree. You almost have to make it.
You got to give those guys breaks, because if and I'm speaking predominantly construction, right? The manufacturing folks are a little bit different, but the breed of people that's on their feet, swinging hammers, doing stuff, moving around, you put them in a chair for an all-day class, their eyes start.
It's nap time.
They get heavy.
Right. If I'm sitting, I'm sleeping.
Yeah, which I used to take offensive personally. It's historically, right, where I grew up, you'd get kicked out of your chair, right? I'll come up and Spartan kick you out of your chair.
Right.
I can't do that in the regular world. You just got to talk louder or direct a question to them, right? Get them, all right, maybe it's time to take a break. But you can't feed these guys through a fire hose and expect them to retain any information.
I know, man. And that's so interesting, because I used to have the same feeling that these guys are sleeping, and I used to get angry. Well, I'm not teaching these guys then if they're not going to be paying attention and respectful or whatever, until I realized that these guys don't sit. If they're sitting, it's because they're at home drinking a beer, watching a game or whatever at their kids' sport. But not during the workday. They don't sit during the workday. And so it's a lot to ask. And, we've been talking a lot more about it recently, just like the venue and the creature comforts that you provide for training. Chris and I have been doing a lot of training recently. I was just down at a large general contractor in Omaha, downtown. They have a really beautiful training facility. They had refreshments for the guys. It's still painful for the guys to sit there for hours on end. But at least, those comforts were really nice. I can remember, and as do you, you do training in a warehouse with guys sitting on paint buckets around the circle, or they're sitting on bags of ready mix or whatever. Yeah. And that is training, and you can't expect anybody to learn anything that way. So I do think we've at least evolved. A lot of companies realize that if we're going to do this, why don't we get something out of it? Yeah. That's changed quite a bit. Right. But, man, it's rough, and I don't think people appreciate how difficult that is. Yeah, it's interesting, when you get sometimes I do, and it's all one company. Sometimes I do it, and it's a mixed bag, right? You guys do open enrollment stuff for all your clients? And nice. So I'll do, my number's 5, right? My minimum's 5. Yeah. Should be. But so I do it both ways, and I try to tailor to them, right? So I do the same thing Chris does, right? Go around, introduce yourself, tell me what you do for fun. Right. That tells you a lot about a person. So I can try to tie everything back into what they do for fun, right? And everybody does something for fun, right? Whether that's all you do is sit and watch football and drink beer, and that's your fun, then that's your fun. And you can circle most everything back to that and how this particular topic impacts that. Yeah. I like that. So one of the things that I like to do in the PPE portion, and mine's pretty heavy, right? It's because I'm passionate about it. My friends called me GQ in the Marine Corps because I bought all my own stuff because it's better, it's faster, it's cooler, and same in my space now, right? So glasses, hard hat, like all those things. Like I'm rather than just the basic compliant minimum, right? So I'm passionate about that kind of stuff because I'm a gear guy, right? So the PPE section for me is pretty heavy. I like that. But one of the things that I do is I have safety glasses and I paint half of it black, so it's blacked out. I said, "Oh, good, Doug. You don't want to wear your safety glasses today? Here, put this on." The world's built around right-handed people because that's the right way to do things is be right-handed. I'm in, yeah. So I paint the right eye because most people are right-eye dominant. I am. So you do that, and then you walk around, and it's kind of goofy, right? So you just hang out. You don't have to do it for very long, but it gets the point across of like, hey, wear your glasses. Wow. Yeah, what life would be like if you sustain an eye injury or damage or worse. Yeah. And that's an interesting way to do. I like that, man. You get one set, Yeah, I like that. Very good. And so when you say PPE heavy, you have a lot of examples. You're bringing stuff in. They're getting hands-on stuff, and
all the above. Yeah, I got a table full.
Good
right,
for you.
so I'm still staying in the theme. I've got pack outs on top of pack outs because Milwaukee's on their game. Right, so I just got tons. So I wheel these things into the class and spread it out over the table, and I pass everything around except my actual hard hat. Well, because I do the helmet. And I've got the lens on it, and I don't want everybody's greasy fingers finger in my lens.
No doubt.
So that's the only one that I don't pass around. But everything else, I pass around, have them try it on, you know, and kind of show.
So your daily wear, your everyday wear, you wear the helmet rather than a hard hat.
I wear the helmet,
and it's got a lens.
Yep, I aftermarket the lens from the manufacturer.
Okay, very cool.
So, you know, blue eyes are not favorable to the sun, so I'm always wearing glasses.
Like shade.
Yep. So whether that's the amber tint, which that's my safety glass color of choice, but I'll wear that driving because the light will affect me. I'm always wearing sunglasses. So I just got it's mirrored because the mirror's cool. So I just when I'm outside in the sun, I can flip that down.
I was just talking about that with some construction guys just the other day. The new helmet style. And the gentleman, Andy, who was on the program from PIP not too long ago, sent me one just as a trial.
Yeah.
It looks just like my son's like skateboarding helmet.
Sure.
You know, it has that back of the head protection.
Right.
It fits better. It's a little bit more snug. It has the chin strap. It doesn't come off. And it wouldn't just get knocked off if you happen to fall.
Big advocate for those.
I liked it a lot.
I think everybody should go there.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm not sure that there's any real comparison between that and the standard hard hat that you lean over and it falls off.
Right. You know, it's, you know, a high-end car to a pedal bike, right? There's no comparison.
Yeah.
You know, and so one of the things that I do is I'll show them like, okay, here are these helmets. This is a Type 1, right? What is Type 1? And I'll draw it on the whiteboard so we can remember Type 1. I use the Roman numeral 1, and then I put the arrow in there straight down. And then Type 2, Roman numeral number 2, and then I do straight down and then over, right? So you get the top and the side impacts. And then I spend a lot of time talking about that.
I love visuals
think it's
like that,
it's
man.
important.
I think guys appreciate and understand those and relate to those.
Yeah,
That's very good, man.
You know, and the argument's always like, "Oh, this is $100 and whatever hard hat." Well, yeah, you're right. You know, my hard hat's $140, and then you put a $75 lens on it. You know, we're not talking cheap, right?
Yeah,
so that's for my brain, right? There's a lot of black holes up there already. I don't need any more.
I mean, no doubt, $200 doesn't seem like a huge investment for
your brain.
Every day you're going to be using this certainly daily, and no doubt.
You know, it's always $20 for your cheap one or $200 for a good one, but you'll go to the boot store and spend $200 on a pair of whatever kind of shoes you want.
Yeah, no doubt.
And not good footwear for work.
You just dropped $3,500 on a shotgun,
right?
You know. Yeah, I totally agree. So PPE, what other, do you have other areas, other subject matter that you really feel strongly about or that you feel like that you enjoy?
I do, yeah. So PPE, I spend a lot of time on that. And then fall protection, I spend a lot of time on that.
Excellent.
And
nice.
I don't think that I created this, so I'll let because there's no secrets in safety, right? So I despise 6-foot shock absorbers. Right.
The lanyards, the old style lanyards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why do we have them? Because that's what the stores stock.
Yeah.
And then we look at the dollar value, right? They're the cheapest.
Yeah.
That's why we have them. So absolutely, I tell people they have two places, right? One on the shelf because we never bought it, or two, if we bought it in the trash because that's what it is, trash.
That's what it's about worth, yeah.
So I bought just some cheap rope from a hardware store, and I cut it, right, 18 feet.
That's how far you're going to fall?
Yep, and I say, grab the end, just start walking. Oh, keep walking. Keep walking, right? And then I'm like, so this is this. And I show them.
No doubt.
And it helps. Oh, yeah, that's
That's a great visual, man. Excellent.
Because you see guys in that stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not even going to get tight before you hit the ground.
Oh, no, man. I see these guys, and, you know, I mean, a lot of people are requiring fall protection in scissor lifts now. These are company policies, or I think even some of the manufacturers are showing fall protection being utilized in their lifts on their materials.
Sure.
And so people have adopted this, or maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction to catching somebody standing on a mid-rail or something. And so they've got a 6-foot lanyard that might be anchored at an anchor point at a mid-rail level or something, and they're 4-6 feet off the ground, and I don't think it would even engage. It wouldn't even get tight before they hit the ground.
Right.
I think it causes it's very cumbersome to work with. So I think if you're going to commit to that, then you maybe need to reevaluate the equipment.
Yeah, I
you
think.
know, and so there's been some changes to like the retractables and things recently. I know there are retractables that are specifically intended to be anchored overhead versus those that can be anchored at lower levels or waist level or something. I am by no means an expert on fall protection
and
or
I think,
anything.
You know, it's great that we're making and we have those differences, you know, but if we can take the allowing you to make that decision out of it and only make it, you know, where it can be D-ring and below, because if you put it above, it's going to perform just as
you would think,
right?
Yeah.
So if we can, you know, and all leading edge, right? I tell guys, if you're going to buy it, buy it. Buy leading edge, because at some way, shape, or form, whether you know it or not, you're going to be exposed to a leading edge, right? And that radius is going to be sharp enough, and it's going to cut it, right? And just because you have a cable doesn't mean that you're okay, right? So if we can just buy the best, and I get it, right? Buy once, cry once is my motto. But you know, it's hard when you got to outfit 10 guys, and you get them into a 6-foot SRL, and they're $500 a piece.
Yeah.
Versus $100 6-foot shock absorber. Which way are they going to go? Especially if they're entry level. You know, and
I know, man.
There's one guy I sat in on an orientation on a job site once, and on his safety glasses he had cellophane or plastic wrap. I knew why, right? He was a drywall guy, so for dust, or maybe he was a painter, but I knew why he had it on there. And I said, ask that guy why he's got that on there. Because glasses are expensive. So what's that tell you? He's buying those.
Right.
His employer's not.
Yeah.
And I think that might be a theme.
Yeah.
So once we get that figured out, then we can start.
I think you're right on the money, though, man. I think when there are too many choices to be made, too many options, and it gets too confusing, I don't really love that. I think, my friend Mark Damon, who was on a while ago talking about fall protection, he is an advocate for, if you're going to have, as you should, competent persons, then really train them up, really train up your competent persons and take some of the, decision-making out of the hands of the user.
Right.
But just here's what we use, and here's when we use it, here's how we use it. You don't need to make a bunch of decisions. And if you have questions, then go to the competent person, because I don't think we train the competent persons enough, and I think we put too much on the employees to make a bunch of decisions about selection and use, and I think that's an imbalance,
Yeah.
Maybe it should be the other way.
Yeah, if they can't make the decision, if it's already been made for them, that's going to help us.
At least eliminate some of the choices. I remember I see people out in the... Do you have any children?
I do. I have 3.
3 children?
Yep.
I see people out in the world at a restaurant or whatever. They got their 3-year-old at the table, and what do you want to eat, Johnny? And they open up the menu, and Johnny's looking at the pictures, and I'm like, just give them 2 choices.
Yeah, you get
right?
2.
You want the
shots.
macaroni, or you want the chicken strips or whatever.
Yeah.
Why are you giving this 3-year-old 40 choices? It's going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to minimize the intellect of our employees, but they got a lot on their minds. So
yeah, and that depending on the culture and the mental state, right, and that's a whole nother aspect of it, right? But some days they might make better decisions than others,
without question.
And some it just slows me down. I've been doing it this way for 40 years. And, you know, all of the excuses, right? So if we just, it's this way and that's what it is, I think we'd be better off.
Yeah. Someone said to me, make the right choice the easy choice. A couple of years ago or something, a safety person in town said that. If we can do that, I think we've really accomplished something. You know, if you can make the choice that you want your employees to make, the easy choice,
right,
rather than the difficult one, you know, I think we've really gained something there. Because I see that a lot. You know, why didn't you fill in the blank? Well, because it's inconvenient. You know, this was faster, this was easier, this is more comfortable, whatever. Right. You know, that's a constant struggle. And you touched on something that I think is really astute that most people don't realize. Every day is different. You can't assume that every day is going to be the same. The conditions, the attitude, the mindset, all of that stuff is different every day. And we have to understand that our employees they don't have, like, you know, that machine.
Yeah, we're not robots.
Characteristic, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You know, you might come to work the same every day, but the people that you're working next to may or may not, right? And then you know, with regular headspace, arguments they had at home, you know, and then you start adding chemical substances in the mix, and you know, all of the, you know, I tell people, I say, you don't know that guy from Joe down the street, right? If he's not part of your team, or, you know, an employee that is part of your company, you don't know them. You don't know how long they've been swinging that hammer or shooting that, you know, that Hilti gun or whatever the case is. You have no idea. You might as well treat them that they're, you know, like they're a day one employee.
Yeah.
And that way you can, you know, remove yourself from that equation and hopefully not become a statistic, right?
I would agree. Yeah, I think you have to some degree. Unless you've been working in a crew of people that you've known for years.
Which is great, right, internally.
Well, those are ideal.
But then you start getting a bunch of different subcontractors, and, you know, safety is priority until we're behind schedule, right?
Yeah. Do you do a lot of multi-employer workplace type activities? I mean, a lot of your clients are then subs, and you're out on these multi-employer sites?
I do all of the above, yeah. So we write a fair amount of GCs. So I'll do stuff for them. I'll do stuff for the subs, you know, and obviously there's overlap there as well.
And I don't do a lot of construction in my world, man. I'm kind of becoming just an industry. There's so much to know. I mean, between construction, general industry, the industrial hygiene stuff I do occasionally, it's too much for me. So I don't do construction. Are you seeing an improvement in those multi-employer settings? Are general contractors holding subs? I mean, I know there are a few that have always been pretty stringent, but is that improving?
A little bit, yeah. And
slow.
It's, you know, it's always the conversation, right? I know it's not you, it's the subs, and it's that conversation with the insurance carriers as well, right? But, you know, doing the audits and having the conversations with the subcontractors, and, you know, it's always with the employee, right, at that level. It's never with the people that make the decisions. But if we can build that in on the front end, right, you know, the data centers are doing a decent job at some of those things. You can't even walk wrong on one of those sites and you get in trouble, I feel like, right? These guys are still getting hurt.
I don't go on data
You got a 10-hour card.
Sites, man. I don't have a 10-hour card now that you mentioned it. And I'm no longer an authorized trainer, so I couldn't get on one even if I wanted to. But talk about those. You've been on those sites?
I've been on one, I think, twice.
Okay. It's a different world, it sounds like.
It's a different world. I've not worked on them. I think I might have only one time, right? I just know, and I've heard things. And,
I've heard things.
You know, the cut level for the gloves and the hard hats, which I'm on board with the hard hats, the glove thing. There's a valid argument there that we could talk about till we're blue in the face, right? And then the ladders last, which there's lots of problems with ladders. I get it. They're making guys tie off on 4 feet, tie off on a ladder, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? I get they're trying to be and set that precedence, which is kind of where I was going with this, which is good, right? It's going to help the subcontractors local, because hopefully they carry that over to everywhere else that's not quite as stringent, right?
Yes.
Where it's
hopefully it travels.
You know, if they bring that across instead of, oh, finally we don't have to do this, then it's not going to do us any good.
Yeah.
Right. You know,
Right. Exactly.
oh, finally I'm in the country. I can take my seatbelt off.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Like, okay, that
Yes.
doesn't make any sense.
But
right?
I think that's kind of a human nature thing, that regression. You know, we tend to regress to whatever level is expected. So if I'm working on that job site, I'm in town here on the data center, and
right.
they are expecting me to tie off when I'm on a ladder, or, you know, if I step up on a step or something, I'm tied off. And man, I get out to, you know, I'm out in Bankelman.
Freedom.
Yeah, I think people will be as safe as they feel they need to be, rather than to the level that they're being held to in those situations.
Yeah.
It's that's a hard thing to overcome.
It is. And you really have to get in the headspace and like, this is why we don't do those things. And I think photos and videos help us do that until somebody's been directly impacted, right? Until you know somebody.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Then, you know, oh, it's fine, right? You think about I can't think of what his name is, but his speech deal is the In Jam. It's not just about me. He came and did a talk at the Embassy Suites a few years ago. But Cliff Notes version, him and his boy, they were going bird hunting down in Texas. Blaze orange, not a requirement.
Yeah.
Wasn't wearing blaze orange. They were making fun of the city boys that had the blaze orange on.
Right.
His son ends up shooting him in the face.
Yeah.
Right. So now he's
I've
blind.
heard that. Yeah.
And now, you know, so
For not having had on blaze orange or having had safety glasses on,
which he
or
talked
anything.
about wearing all the time when he was at work.
Yeah,
and
right.
doesn't carry it.
And then leaves, goes home, and doesn't do it.
Right. You know, and I try to make a point when I tell people, I say, you know, the things that I'm talking about today apply at work for sure, right? But I want you to take them home.
Thank you. Thank
Apply
you for doing
this
that. Yeah.
in your, you know, your everyday life, right? So I've recently started writing articles and posting them on my LinkedIn, and right now I'm doing a 3-part series on holiday safety.
I'll look for it. That's fantastic.
The last one drops next Monday.
Okay.
So the 13th, the third one will drop, and then I'll repost them again, so they're back
Good.
at the top of everybody's feed.
But we can go
the
onto
week
your
before.
LinkedIn page and then find them.
Yep.
What you've posted
under
recently.
the articles. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Interesting.
you know, some of that stuff, you know, it's geared for home life, but safety's everywhere.
I totally
right?
agree, man.
You gotta have it at work. You gotta have it at home. Whatever we can do to get these people to think about what is this going to look like, right? And I always am like, you want your son or daughter to do what you're doing? Would you let them do that? Would you let them work at your company?
Well, that's a great question.
You know, and if the answer is no, why? Right? Well, they need training. Okay, good. Let's get better training. Right? Let's get more training. Drives me nuts when people want to train after hours or on the weekend. You're not making time for safety at that point.
Right.
Right? It's all lip service.
No shit.
We're checking the box to be compliant.
Great comment.
Right? So
Yeah.
you got to make it a focal point. We get that buy-in, and we've got to.
Well, employees know. I mean, if we don't have time for safety, or we don't have time for training, or it gets canceled every week because something came up, they understand where it falls in the priority chain, you know, or as far as a value, if you want to use that terminology. But
You know, and I know why people go to work, right? The same reason I go to work every day. Because I want a bigger bank account, right? We need money.
you got a family, you got to take care of, you got responsibilities, we got to have income.
And as a business, we got to make money, right? But we also have to pay attention, and, you know, nobody's going to take money faster than an injured employee.
No doubt.
Right? You look at some of those claim costs, and,
Interesting, yes.
you know, safety is years, right? You start talking mod rates and premium increases and employee morale and training and retraining. We can't find employees now.
Yeah.
So marketing and retention, and, you know, we can talk about it for eons. But
Those are things that are important when you're trying to make your case with, you know, the C-suite folks. That's the language they speak.
Yeah, you got to talk dollars and cents to the C-suite, because that's what they understand.
Right.
Right. You know, okay, we need to spend more money to pay our employees because, right? Or we need to spend money on this item, right? Better fall protection, whatever it is, right? We need to allocate and pay people to go through this training because it's important. so they don't get injured. So they come back to work, you know, and then you try to tie dollars and cents to the employee so they better understand. You know, do easy math, right? So you make your $100 a week, right? And you get injured, you get your percentage. What does it look like? Not great. You got your cool-off period of 7 days in the state of Nebraska before you get paid, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then you reduce your regular base pay. Let's call
About
it half.
2/3 or something,
yeah.
or half, okay.
I don't know the actual percentage, like
Something
40%
like that, yeah.
or something, right? So just call it half. You gonna feed your family on that?
Yeah.
No. Right? No. And then, you know, return to work, we start talking about that. And the longer people are away, the more it's going to cost you. One, and that, you know, after 7 days, it goes into your mod calculation. And your mod calculation goes into your premium price. So after a week, you start paying more money years, right, for insurance premiums. You know, so we just talk dollars and cents. You know, hey, employee, you're not going to get paid if you get hurt. Can you afford to live? Yes or no? And then, hey, C-suite, this is what it looks like.
Right.
You know, safety doesn't generate revenue. It takes it, and it can take it really, really fast.
Yeah.
So if we don't allocate time for good training, right, I don't care about your programs. That's compliance, right?
I agree.
Two sides of safety. Compliance and keeping your people safe.
Totally agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we spend more time keeping our people safe, and, you know, I get having the programs and all this stuff, right? It's can't have one without the other.
But that's not where you need to spend your time, really.
Right.
I mean, that can be done. You know.
The weight needs to be on keeping my guys and gals safe.
Agreed. I totally agree. I think that's lost on a lot. I think that this obsession with compliance, I think, is a problem, actually, rather than a solution, unfortunately. I think so. And that's something that I've talked about before, man. I mean, you have to be... We want to be compliant, of course, and that compliance mindset has a place, I suppose, but I don't want my focus on compliance. I think you're missing the forest for the trees, or whatever the appropriate...
Well, and then you start talking compliance, and that's a whole nother argument, right? Because the only thing compliance that's black and white is the paper and the ink. Everything else is LOIs, and, you know, how it is. Safety is so subjective, right? How do we look at it?
Incredibly subjective.
So being compliant, right? What is compliant to you? Well, it depends, right? Oh, it's a technical term, by the way. You know, it's... What does that mean to you? Well, it's going to be different for everybody. So I get it, right? It's important for us to do that, but I think too often folks are spending more time trying to be what they consider compliant and checking the box.
Right.
Or not.
It's a little easier, frankly, I think, just to go through a checklist.
Yeah, and then you look at the rail car fatality a few years ago here in town, where we backfilled some boxes, right? And then they're paying the price for that. You know, and inspection sheets get pencil whipped all the time. You know, you think powered industrial trucks, right? Oh, yep, good. Let's go. We got to move this pallet, right? Instead of taking, 30 seconds to look at your lift, right? Because that's all it takes. You walk around it, you know what you're looking for. If it's obvious, it's going to jump out at you.
Yeah.
You run your controls real fast, and here we go, right?
Yeah.
And then you can good, and then let's go, right? And then, one of the things that I like to pick on for forklifts in general, right, is PSI. How many guys have gauges on the truck? You know how many I've seen? Zero.
I was just going to say that. I was just thinking, man, I can't remember the last time.
But that directly ties back into how much I can lift, how that lift is supposed to perform.
Right.
Well, if my gauge is in my truck or in the maintenance tool crib all the way across the job site of the plant, people are one word, and they will be, and they have been, and that will never change. And that's lazy.
Right?
Right? I'm going to take the path of least resistance.
Least resistance, certainly, yeah.
And I'm either going to drive the lift to go get it, if you do, so good for you if you do that.
Right.
But definitely not going to walk and go get it.
No.
Low probability that we do that, so.
That's absolutely true.
But it's just, that's one thing I always like to hit on for forklifts is air pressure, right?
Yeah, do you have any idea?
Telehandlers. Some of them are 90. I don't know, right? They're all different. But You know, and that rubber on those tires is, you know, thicker than your car. You know, you look at your car, and even depending on what type of tire you have on your car, your old tires on your car, it'll be easier for you to tell if they were low versus your new ones, just because they're different.
That's true. That is
so
true.
The tires on those things are, you know, they're thick rubber, so it's going to be less likely that you can visually see that.
Right. That's an interesting comment, man. Frankly, that's something that I don't focus on very closely, and I should. That's a very interesting comment. Good for you. You're kind of wise beyond your years, man.
I told you, got a lot of miles, Doug.
That's fantastic. Ezra, this is fantastic, man. I'm so glad that you can join me. I have a question or two just about for you.
Yeah.
Is Ezra a family name, or how did that come to be?
I think my mom just pulled it out of a hat.
Okay. Because you may be the only Ezra that I've ever met.
I can count on one hand how many I've met.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I've been a lot of places.
Are they all family?
No, I've been a lot of places and I've done a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. So in all of my travels, I've only met 4 or 5.
Really? Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It is an interesting name. It sounds like is it a biblical name, perhaps?
It is, yeah. So it's, you know, everybody's got a more common name. Not everybody, but a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. You know, how many Dougs have you run into? A lot.
Yeah, there's quite a few Dougs out there.
So when you hear your name spoke, it's not, you know, but for me, when I hear it,
yeah, no doubt.
Who's talking to me? Who do I know? And they're talking to, you know, the one was a little boy outside of a coffee shop. They named their kid Ezra. And I'm like, it's so weird. And then there's a pastor at my church, and that is one of the, not the church that I go to, but the other one of it, Pastor Ezra. So when I hear that name, it's different. It's weird.
Yes, absolutely.
To hear my name spoke and not directed to me.
Right.
Just because I've met so few.
Yeah.
Right.
And Schlecht, is that a German name?
German. Yep.
It sounds very German.
Yep.
Very cool.
It means bad.
Does it?
So when you get to my
bad
name,
isn't not good, or bad isn't like badass, or
well, let's call it badass.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So when my name would get called in a roster, you know, in school in the Marine Corps, they'd get to my name, whether it was start at my first or my last, right? And they'd get to and you know where you're at, and they get this look on their face. You're like, yeah, I'm right here.
They were trying to pronounce it, reading it, getting ready to.
Yeah, one of my drill instructors called me Shrek because he couldn't say it. So
of course, the path of least resistance.
Yeah, that's right.
Just lazy.
Yeah.
And then, what do you do in your free time? That's a question we ask all of our students when we do training.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy doing? I mean, obviously with 3 children.
Yep. So a lot
of your time is
that's my time now.
Family.
Right. So I got a 4-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and a 4-month-old.
Okay, man. Say no more.
Yeah. So I'm busy doing that, but I like to hunt, fish, camp, do anything outside.
Outdoor
that's
stuff.
Kind of what I'm after.
Those were all. It sounds like those were your passions before.
Yeah,
the
I
Marine Corps?
liked to be outside and do that kind of stuff.
Good
right?
for you, man.
Big, not as big anymore, but I used to be big into shooting. I've since kind of got more into archery.
Nice. Very cool.
It's a form of therapy. It's
very zen. It seems like.
Yeah,
man.
and there's so many rabbit holes you can run down and change and do different. But when you shoot, that's all you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're gonna shoot decent or good, like that's all you can think about, and you just.
And then you hunt with a bow. Mm-hmm. Bow hunt.
Yep. It's very therapeutic to shoot your bow.
I would love. You know, I am a grown man. I'm an old man. I don't have a lot of hobbies. Shooting a bow has an appeal. I don't know if it's like some kind of primitive, instinctive thing about shooting a bow that would be, but I see people that shoot bows, listen to Joe Rogan talk about it occasionally on his podcast and stuff, and it sounds like it would be incredibly therapeutic.
It is. It's a great form of therapy.
That I would enjoy.
Right. So, you know, and the Black Rifle guys, John Dudley, Joe Rogan, they all do a really good job at like pushing that for veterans. So if you're listening to this and you are a veteran and you don't shoot a bow, you should shoot a bow.
Take it up.
You should. Matthews should endorse me. So if they listen to this, holler at your boy.
Matthews is
it's a
the
brand,
manufacturer of the bow that you shoot.
Yep, because I shoot at Matthews. Right.
Good, man. Let's get you some sponsorships.
That's right. But if you don't, you should, because it's a great form of mental therapy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you again, man.
Absolutely.
It's been really interesting. and I hope we get to spend more time together.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. So
It's great.
Veterans, thank you so much. Everybody enjoy Veterans Day tomorrow. You know, be grateful. If you happen to encounter a veteran, be thankful. But I hope everyone has a good day, enjoys the weekend, and we will talk to you next Friday.
I think one thing before we cut out,
Please.
Everybody's, thank you for your service, which I do mean that. But more importantly, I want to thank everybody for their sacrifice, because I think that's more important, right? Because they sacrificed a lot to go do that, right? Because it's voluntary. So they gave up a lot, home life, kids, all that stuff. So thank you guys for your sacrifice.
Career, you put a lot on hold.
Yeah.
You put a lot on hold. I appreciate that's a great comment. Very good. Thank you, Ezra.
You bet.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Dylan,
guys.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
See ya.
Talk to you guys next week.